going on, everyone? Kim Becker and Ryan Blackburn here for your weekly Denver Nuggets AMA. The Nuggets taking on the Suns finally in Game 3. Ryan, does it feel like you had an entire week off of vacation with no games this week?
You know, it does. If I'm being honest, I didn't really know what to do with myself for a lot of these days. There's just not a lot going on, and I found a couple things to do. I got groceries. I did adult things. Like that's the most important thing.
That's good. You need to have time to do that. So we're glad we got you some time to do that. But obviously, the Nuggets are in Phoenix taking on the Suns. They lead the series 2-0. We've got a lot of questions here from fans. Of course, this is a really exciting time for Denver fans, so we'll get right into it. This first question is from Nick. What is your biggest fear for the Nuggets going into Game 3?
Yeah, fear's probably the wrong word if I'm being honest. I'm pretty confident in where Denver stands. I think it's hard not to be confident with where Denver stands. Just being up 2-0 in the manner that they've played, the biggest thing that the Suns thought that they had as an advantage was their offense. It was creating good shots against the Nuggets, and that just hasn't really manifested. And credit to Denver for being able to do that and kind of do something unexpected, which I just don't think a lot of people thought was going to happen. But if there was something to fear, I'd probably just say, hey, Kevin Durant has not been fully Kevin Durant yet, and Devin Booker has not been fully Devin Booker yet. There is an opportunity for those guys to have big games, big performances, and that will be like that's something that you just can't really control. Denver's done as best a job as they can to try to control that, but that's the thing that they can't really control if those guys just play really well. The one thing that they can control is whether role players go off, whether role players have an open shot especially at home. They're probably going to shoot better, whether it's role players like Damian Lee or Landry Shamet or even DeAndre Ayton, who would probably play a little bit better. But that's the one thing I think if I had a fear, I'd say Denver can't really control the star stuff, but if they let go of the rope and allow the role players to be successful, that's something to at least be concerned about.
Well, you just mentioned a couple of them, Devin Booker and KD there might get even more opportunity to shine because Chris Paul might be out. And this next question from In the Clutch, if Chris Paul is out, how do you predict the Suns will adjust?
Yeah, this is a tough one because they don't really have a lot of options here. That's the one thing about the Suns is after trading for Kevin Durant, sending out a bunch of their elite role player types, they don't really have a lot of answers at this point. So I think if I'm them, I'm probably starting Cameron Payne in place of Chris Paul to try to normalize what's going on. Cameron Payne's a point guard. He can handle the ball. He can run some offense, not necessarily be dynamic, but if Denver does let him go, then he has an opportunity to beat Denver. There's no doubt about that. But the most important thing I'd say is that they're probably going to put the ball in Devin Booker's hands more. They're probably going to play point Booker, somebody who he's had a lot of great moments as a scorer, but also as a passer and can do some things creating for other people. So going to be interesting to see how they react in general, but those will be the two primary adjustments. It's going to be Cam Payne most likely in the starting lineup, but if that doesn't really work, they will not hesitate to put more defenders, more shooters around Devin Booker and Kevin Durant to try to make their jobs easier because they're going to have the ball anyway.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, this next question from Nikola Jokic Fan Club. What a name, aren't we all? What are the things to focus on as a fan? An interesting angle here for the next few games.
Yeah, I think if you're Denver, if you're Nuggets fans, you are doing your best to try to keep a clear head on all of this. You don't want to put the cart before the horse. That's the most important thing. We just literally saw the Golden State Warriors come back from being down 0-2 when they lost both of the home games. And so if you are a Nuggets fan, you have to know, okay, we're not going to play with fear on this, but we're going to be properly conscious of what's going on and understand, okay, this is a potential issue if Denver doesn't rise to the occasion here. But if you're a fan, I think the couple of things to focus on for sure are how does Denver respond to another hostile road crowd? They did a great job against Minnesota, winning Game 3, despite the fact that those fans in that building, I was there, those fans in that building were going crazy. So it's going to be interesting to see how Denver responds there. But the other thing is, if you're a fan, you want to see Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. get going. Those guys, they have to get going. If you're a Nuggets fan, if you want to see Denver win a championship, They have to be dynamic. Jamal had a horrible game two. He
Yeah.
probably won't be that bad ever again in these playoffs, but
Yeah.
knock on wood, of course. Michael Porter Jr., though, a couple bad games. Denver hasn't played that well with him yet so far, but I do think that there's an opportunity for them to really show up in that way. So fans, if you're interested, that's probably the angle to go with.
All right. Well, staying on that exact topic, let's chat about MPJ. We've got a question from Nathan. Should I be encouraged that the Nuggets are up 2-0 and MPJ hasn't done much, or discouraged how easily the Suns took him away? What do you think about this one?
Oh, you should absolutely be encouraged. Like that's the most important thing with Denver. They've won with defense. That's not something that I don't think any fan really fully acknowledged that this was a possibility for Denver.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing in all this is that they've been able to win with their defense, and that's not something that anybody really expected. And it's changed up the way that Denver, like how much they have to rely on Michael Porter Jr., how much they have to rely on Jamal Murray to be great. They just had Nikola Jokic be great, and then all of the defense possible around him. And that's a great sign for Denver for the playoffs to come, because it's like your defense is supposed to travel. That's the axiom. That's the belief, is that as long as you're playing great defense, you're going to stay in every single game. If your offense is elite, then there are going to be times where that offense really falls off. And if your defense doesn't respond, then that's a little bit different. But for Michael Porter, I believe that he's going to break out. I believe that over these next two games, 3 and 4, I think that there are going to be opportunities for him that he will take advantage of. And I would be encouraged as a Nuggets fan that Denver, they're up 2-0, despite the fact that he hasn't been perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's so funny because we've just been talking about postseason Jamal Murray, but he had obviously some great games in the first round, put up a lot of points in the first game there. But MPJ is one that I find so fascinating when it comes to the two of these guys, because MPJ can have a great game and then you predict him to have a great game the next game and he absolutely bombs. He is the most unpredictable Nugget, I think.
He's the X factor. And that's one of the most important things for Denver, is that they've had when he has to be great in those fourth quarters in that Minnesota series, he's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And when he hasn't had to be great, he hasn't been. And Denver, they can sometimes forget about him at times.
Yeah.
They can sometimes realize, okay, we don't need him in this situation. Let's go with Bruce Brown. Let's go with Christian Brown. Let's focus more on Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, guys like that. That's what being an elite role player is that you fill your role, and if it's not needed, then you don't have to do it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Hilarious. All right, this next question, we've got quite a few here today. This is awesome. From Ryan Wright, do you think the Suns with Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson would be better suited to match up against the Nuggets?
It's funny that is a possible question here, because they traded for Kevin Durant. Like if anybody, like that should be the guy that you're most afraid of. But because of the way that Denver has played defense in this particular setup, they've benefited from it. They haven't had to worry about all of the actions where Mikal Bridges is open on the weak side, Cam Johnson open on the weak side when you're running pick and roll with Chris Paul or Devin Booker. Denver's done a great job of loading up on Devin Booker or Kevin Durant, and then they don't care if Josh Okogie shoots or if Torrey Craig shoots. They're not as worried about those guys. And if it was one of Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson in the corner, they'd probably feel some kind of way about it. So I am kind of not really surprised that this is a question that's popped up here, but this is always the thing.
Yeah.
If Phoenix, like in the coming years, Phoenix is going to be even better because they're going to be able to fill in for the Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson guys. Those are easily replaceable players, or not easily, but more replaceable players than a guy like Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. But the fact is that their roster is flawed right now because they don't have great solutions around their core players. And Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, those guys would have benefited.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, one thing you did mention there is the defense. And Ryan, you and I have talked about the defense in the Denver Nuggets. So I just want to get your take first before I get to this next question. At the end of the regular season, you said, the defense has to step up, especially on the road. They weren't performing as well on defense as they were at home, or really all kind of around the entire season there. Now, what have you seen out of their defense lately that you have really liked?
Well, the most important thing with this is that they're trying hard. They are really, really putting in the effort. And if you're a Nuggets fan, that was at least a possible question. That was at least something that you had to be concerned about before, when in the regular season they weren't going full bore. They weren't just trying to get into people playing super aggressively. And they told us that it was okay and that they would do that when the time came. And I think a lot of us were like, okay, we gotta see it to believe it. Now we've seen it. Now we've seen what's going on, and it's really cool to
Yeah.
be able to just to have them back up that talk where
Yeah.
they just needed to get to the playoffs in order for it to matter as much as it does. And it is very cool that this is where we're at with it.
Awesome. All right. Well, this question from AJ, kind of on that same tone on defense. What has surprised you the most about our situational rotations and daring them to keep taking mid-range shots?
Well, one thing that the Suns have not done a good job in this series is drawing fouls, is
Hmm.
drawing free throw attempts. And obviously that can change when you go home in a
Hmm.
series like this. Denver
Hmm.
goes on the road, they'll probably get fewer calls in a
Yeah.
road situation. But I do think that kind of situationally, Denver's done a great job of defending without fouling, defending with their feet as opposed to their hands, doing a great job of contesting every shot, jumping, diving for loose balls, doing just about everything. And the rotations, of course, AJ mentioned just there, those have been on point. They've been precise. And Denver, they hadn't had that level of precision in the regular season. And I think it's mostly because they didn't have to for
Hmm.
obvious reasons. But it is really cool that Denver in like the previous series that they had, the Phoenix Suns had against the Los Angeles Clippers, they averaged 29 free throw attempts per game. Against Denver, it's way less. It's
Wow.
probably down to I think like 12. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm. Okay, well, kind of going back to another thing we talked about a few weeks ago when the Nuggets and the Suns went head to head at the end of the regular season. You mentioned that you thought it would be beneficial for the Nuggets to sit their starters, rest their starters, so that the Suns don't have any ammunition, right, to study off of. Do you think that that's helped them in this postseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they knew how to deal with Jamal Murray in the first game, and Jamal absolutely made them pay as a result.
Yeah.
Then they overloaded on that. They decided, hey, we are going to try to take away Jamal Murray right now. What they didn't realize is that Denver, they have the ability to defend, they have the ability to match up, and this is what happens when you overload on Jamal. Nikola Jokic comes to play. Nikola Jokic really delivers in those situations. So I don't think that they fully realized what they were getting into with this series. I think that
Nice.
they had certain beliefs about Denver. They didn't realize that the offense was going to be as good as it was. They didn't realize that the defense was going to be as good as it was. I think that they underestimated Denver, thought that they would roll over a little bit, and that just has not happened at all.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hey, it's always nice to kind of think back on what we talked about and see how it all panned out. So good that that one is going in the way that we were hoping here. We've got two more questions to wrap up this AMA this week. This next one from Michael. This is not a playoff question, but what do you think about the Nuggets retiring Carmelo Anthony's jersey?
Yeah, it's funny. The reason why this came up was because Carmelo Anthony was seen at Game One of
Uh-huh.
the Knicks Heat series, celebrating with John Starks on the sideline after some threes, and just being a part of their culture,
Hmm.
despite the fact that he played with the Nuggets as much as he played with the Knicks. Now, the Knicks tenure, I think, is more. I think he enjoyed that a little bit more, and I think he's really like kind of distanced himself a little bit from the Nuggets during this time. So retiring his jersey, he's obviously been one of the most impactful Nuggets of franchise history. He should get his jersey retired. The problem is that Nikola Jokic wears that same number. And honestly, like we know if the Nuggets had to choose between one or the other, you know who they're choosing like 20
Yeah.
times out of 10. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they actually do with that. I have to imagine because Carmelo Anthony has not announced his retirement yet, I don't think. Once he does, it wouldn't surprise me if Denver decided to put out a statement saying,
Yeah.
once Nikola Jokic retires too, we'll retire both of your numbers at the same time. But the fact is that maybe they ask Joker, maybe they say, hey, do you care if we change your number? And Joker might say yes. He might, if he does care, then I wouldn't blame him. Like it's my
Yeah.
number that I've won multiple MVPs with
I
before.
would
So
keep that. Yeah.
I,
I wouldn't want them to change it, I don't think.
exactly. So I think what they're probably going to do is they're probably not even going to go to Joker on that and say, hey,
Yeah.
we've got this amazing player in Denver. We are going to retire both of these jerseys at the same time, or at least one right after the other
Totally.
when both are all said and done.
Yeah, I agree with you there. That's tough, especially when you're in the midst of still playing, still kind of at your peak play, I don't think that it makes much sense to go to Joker after what he's done for this team recently and ask about that. Like you said, Carmelo Anthony, it's so funny just thinking back growing up here. And the only reason like I knew who Carmelo Anthony was before he even stepped foot on the court with the Nuggets was because I would always see Lala's pink Range Rover around town. I can
That's
still remember
amazing.
it.
And I got to take you back to 2015 too, when Denver actually added Nikola Jokic and decided, we'll give you 15. There's nothing going to happen. Nothing's going to come of this, right? I don't think anybody thought, oh yeah, this could be a multiple time MVP who makes this decision difficult for Denver.
Literally. Yeah. It's so crazy to think back. Nice little time to reminisce for everybody. All right. We've got one more question to end this one today. Who is the next break glass in case of emergency guy if the Nuggets drop game 3 and are down 10 in game 4? Very specific, but I love this.
It is a very specific scenario, but I think it's realistic in terms of, hey, Phoenix, they're going to try to figure some things out. They figured a couple things out at the end of or towards the middle and end of game 2, despite the fact that they only scored 87 points. Chris Paul, obviously, that's going to be a little bit like we're going to see what happens with Chris Paul. I don't think that he plays, but if the Suns figure out a formula, if they figure out a way to win, maybe Denver's guys don't show up in game 3, and then maybe things go a little bit funky in game 4, and they're not getting like foul calls, things like that. It wouldn't surprise me if they decided to break out Reggie Jackson, somebody who is a little bit more of a ball handler, a little bit more of a creator, somebody who can generate offense off the dribble and maybe create some good shots for himself and others, and taking some pressure off of Jamal Murray. That's one thing that I think if you're a Nuggets fan, you watched what happened with Jamal Murray and you think, okay, Denver can probably manage that. They can probably deal with it. But what if they can't? What if Jamal continues to struggle? What if Bruce Brown has a bad game? And then Denver's kind of out of luck when it comes to ball handlers and creators and guys that can actually go off the dribble. So it wouldn't surprise me if they decide to go that direction. I wouldn't bet on it because I think that Denver's going to win one of these next 2 games, if not both.
Nice.
But it is at least an emergency scenario if Denver finds himself at risk of going down or tied up 2-2 coming back to Denver. You do not want to see that happen. But we will see what ultimately does. It could be Reggie, it could be Vlatko, it could be Zeke Naji, it could be DeAndre Jordan. Like who knows?
All right. Well, we've got games 3 and 4 in Phoenix this weekend. Like you said, hopefully the Nuggets can pick one of those up so they return to Denver for game 5. Where are you going to be watching the games from, Ryan?
I will be watching from the Stiffs Night Out that Mile High Sports is doing. I am looking forward to being there at the West Rail Tap and Grill on Friday night. Come by, say hi. It's in Lakewood if you're interested. That would be a lot of fun. There'll be food, drinks, and plenty of vibes. Should be great.
Food, drinks, vibes, and probably some betting. If you're a betting person, a betting gal, a betting guy, I am. So that's what I'll be doing because I need to make my money back from the NHL playoffs because I put a lot of money on the Avs going further than they did. So now it's time for the Nuggets to get me back on track here. All right, Ryan. Well, thank you so much. As always, we will see you next week, hopefully with some good news.
Thanks, Kim. Good to talk to you.